Game 9 of the World Chess Championship, all square so far. Let's fill in a few details on this game. Carlsen, with the white pieces, went for the English, and they repeated the line that they played in Game 4, where Caruana went for this kind of reversed Sicilian position. Of course, this is a well-known variation. And here, instead of the old knight b6, he once again played this quite trendy line with bishop c5, which he has experience of before, with both colours actually. And all as in Game 4. And in that game, Carlsen played bishop d2, but he played a new move today, bishop g5. Now this has been played in one game previously by a couple of amateurs. So you could say this is the first time it's been played in a top level game. So this is just a little bit awkward for black. If the pawn comes out to f6, then queen b3 causes a little accident. As usual in these kind of positions, there's pressure on these lines. So Caruana took on c3, and then played f6, and the bishop came back to c1. So what's happened with that little transaction? Well, I think white can be pretty pleased actually, because usually in these kind of Sicilian structures, it's a mistake to exchange here on c3 or with colours reversed on c6, because this pawn on c3 covers the all-important d4 square. So these centre pawns give, in this case white, more control of the centre. Also, Carlsen has induced this pawn move f6, which means in the very long term, black's king is a little bit more open. Now, if you feed this into a computer, it will say that black is absolutely fine. And bishop g5 certainly isn't shown as one of the best moves in the position. But I have a feeling Carlsen looked at this in his preparation and thought, perfect, my kind of position. I've got more centre pawns, I've weakened black's king, and in practical terms, this is interesting. And I think good judgment. It also brought Caruana into a situation which he was unfamiliar with. And I think that is obviously a big plus. Caruana's opening preparation on the whole has been very good in this match. And it was quite clear that Caruana was unsettled. He was consuming a lot of time. And, well, we can see why the bishop came all the way back to c1, because it wanted to come here to support the advance with d4, which Magnus achieved straight away. Bishop d5, so this bishop prevents e4, controls some nice light squares. Queen c2, nice move. Sometimes there are some tic-tacs here. Looks at e4, looks at c4 potentially, and prepares to bring a rook into the middle. Caruana exchanged on d4. Played bishop e4. And we thought, oh my goodness, are we going to get a draw by repetition? No, of course not. The queen came back to d1. And at this moment, clock time's 1:43 for Carlsen, 1:03 for Caruana. 40-minute time advantage. Carlsen, with the increment, has actually increased the time on his clock. So this is tricky for Caruana. Of course, here he could play a normal move, bishop, queen d7. He also mentioned knight a5, but he took a fundamental decision here to simplify, which is an admission that he has a slightly worse position, but it defined the problems, basically. Well, I'll explain that in a second. Caruana said he didn't want to wait here. When one was the clock situation, he was down on time, and he felt that white had a kind of very natural plan here to play e3, move the knight back at some point, and eventually try to realise this central pawn majority. Once again, objectively, engines think that black is absolutely fine in this position, but practically it's not so simple, and that's what Carlsen understands very well, and Caruana too. So he looked for clarity. He exchanged on f3, so that means he's going to take here. So Carlsen throws in a check first, king in the corner, and bishop takes. Now bishop takes will lose to this one, pin and win, down the d file. So knight takes, and white has to exchange, and queen takes, e3, queen drops back, and bishop takes b7. So basically material has evened up, level material. So let's just take in the new position. Now there's no doubt that white is better here, because this bishop isn't terribly good. It's blocked here. Those pawns are split. Well, not significant when the bishop sits there, but even so, it's somewhat passive. And as the pawns are split, then of course this past c pawn can go nowhere. White's bishop is very good, potentially on these diagonals, attacking black's king. And this 4 against 3 pawn majority can be significant. Well, we've seen plenty of examples of rook and bishop against rook in Carlsen's games, actually. For example, a last round game from Vaikonze a few years ago against Karyakin, where he succeeded in converting this kingside pawn majority. And in the summer, we saw his game against Mamedyarov, where Carlsen was on the receiving end of this kind of position. Also, all the major pieces are on the board, so it could be that white succeeds in attacking with a queen as well. So Caruana has to be a little bit careful here. But so why did Caruana go in for this? Well, the problem is well defined. It's quite clear what black needs to do. Black is looking to exchange all the heavy pieces and go into an opposite colour bishop endgame, which would certainly be drawn. So it's a slightly drier position. It gives Caruana clarity. He knows exactly what he's aiming for. And normally one would imagine that this would be the kind of position that Carlsen is very comfortable with. He likes squeezing these slight advantages. Excuse me a second. And after the game, he mentioned that he should have just brought the bishop back to f3. And later on, if black tries to sort of block out with h5 and h5 and f5, that he still later on has the possibility to play h3 and g4 to break up those pawns. Now this is a bit abstract, but he just went for h4, which normally is the kind of move you would want to play here, gaining space, and then you try to attack on this diagonal. Well, let's see how Caruana dealt with this. First of all, g6. Now that means that black is ready to block with h5 and if necessary f5, just to clamp down the king side. So Carlsen really had to push forward here. And this is crunch time again. If black waits, let's say with king g7, then, well, we could play the bishop back to f3, maybe king g2, rook h1, and just hold this position. And this is actually rather uncomfortable for black, who will have to deal with potential threats on the h-file. But Caruana defended in a very concrete way. He'd actually realised that he could get away with taking this pawn on h5, which looks incredibly ugly. If white were able to have a few moves in a row, something like king g2, rook h1, and maybe bishop back here, and take on h5, then this is virtually a winning position for white. Because Pawns are shattered, attacking against the king. But here's the problem for Carlsen, that actually Caruana is going to give back this pawn, which breaks open white's king. And that's what happened. So queen c4 prevents h4. f5 opens up the diagonal for the queen. Now Carlsen played bishop f3. I just want to show you a really entertaining line that was suggested by Judith Polgar on the commentary. So bishop f3 played in the game, but let me show you Judith's idea. So bishop d5, which does prevent exchange of rooks. And here, actually, queen g5 is absolutely fine for black. But instead, Judith was kind of playing around with queen e5. And now the rook is going to come across to h1. And this is really beautiful. Just watch this, folks. Rook takes h7. This is a good practice in checkmating patterns. Rook takes h7. Beautiful. And now the less obvious follow-up is bishop g8, which makes room for white's queen. Well, first of all, let's just deal with king g6. Then the king gets checked up the board. And we don't even need to take the queen. There we are. And mate on f7. Okay, let's go back here. So bishop g8 just played. So rook takes, queen f7, and it's going to be mate with a pawn. Fantastic. I tell you what, Judith Polgar is so sharp tactically. You know, these ideas just kind of fizz out of her brain. She's now retired, but she is still absolutely with it. And I would recommend the official commentary with Anna Rudolph and Judith Polgar. Very entertaining and very instructive. So, f5 played, and Carlsen went for bishop f3, which provokes black. I mean, bishop f3 is just a kind of consolidating move, really. And Caruana played h4, crucial move, which opens up white's king. First, I was thinking maybe g4 was the way to play. From a positional point of view, of course, it's nice to have these two connected pawns, but actually, after queen f6, black is absolutely fine here, because white has to be a little bit careful with the king. And the queen looks at f2. Sometimes this might be possible to play c5 and bishop c7. Black is fine there. Of course, Carlsen understood that and just calmed the game down a little bit. He took here, but now it's clear and that black is absolutely fine. Queen f6 covers along the diagonal, very good. And white can get nowhere here when this pawn is vulnerable on h4. Carlsen switched across. Bishop c5, good move. Yeah, take care, white could be in trouble. So Carlsen exchanged rooks, and basically not long after they exchanged queens. Let's just go a little bit further. Well, with opposite colour bishops, this is always going to be a draw. And, well, the players continued for almost another 20 moves, but this is a stone-cold draw. Carlsen was a bit disappointed after the game that he didn't manage to make more progress, but actually, looking back here, well, many of us were quite critical of bishop takes f3. We felt that this was unnecessary from Caruana, but actually the challenger proved that this was a very practical defensive decision. And well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and he managed to actually hold that game with relative ease, I would say. So 9 games, 9 draws. It's very frustrating. It's incredibly tense. But one of them needs to produce something very special if they're going to win a game before the tie breaks. I just want to say thank you to all those people that have come up to me and said hello at the match. It's really nice to hear from you, see you in person. So I really appreciate that. It's been really nice to meet you. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching.